Welcome back. The show's called Brand Equity, and I'm Sonali Krishna. Now, it's not news when I say that the world today belongs to the geeks. The nerds have taken over, and they are clearly the new cool. So much so that this is making almost all traditional businesses a little insecure and anxious. This is why most old-school companies are trying to tune into the space to get a sense of what is really happening, which is what Unilever is doing via its arm, Unilever Foundry, where it connects with entrepreneurs and startups and gives them a platform to innovate. Via Unilever Foundry, the FMCG behemoth is somewhat wearing a VC's hat. I caught up with Jeremy Bassett, the head of Unilever Foundry, to find out how this has been working for the company and, more importantly, what their plans are for the Indian market. Take it away. Thank you so much for joining us, Jeremy. Truly a pleasure having you on Brand Equity.
Great to be here, Sonali.
So first things first, can you take me through the inception of the idea for Unilever Foundry? What exactly was the motivation for Unilever to set up this, this startup venture, so to speak?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we've been, obviously Unilever is the world's second biggest advertiser.
Sure.
And one of the things that we've observed over the last 15 years is that startups are pioneering the future of marketing. And one of the things that we've wanted to do is look at how can we pioneer the future? So the Foundry is really a platform that enables our brands to connect with startups, to bring new innovation into our brands, to drive new campaigns, and together help startups to scale up so that we can together pioneer the future.
Sure. So how does it work?
So the way it works is brands write a brief, and we always say the bigger the brief, we always say the bolder the brief, the better the brief.
Sure.
Go into the process ready to be inspired. And then what happens is startups apply. So if you go onto the Foundry website, what you'll find is a whole bunch of different challenges there, which startups can apply. We then shortlist the companies that have applied, and we bring them in to a Dragon's Den type event where they have the chance to pitch to our senior leaders.
Sure. So essentially the ones who make it, you fund them.
We fund them, and you'll see on the website, we've got $50,000 US commitments to pilot with the companies that come through that process.
Sure, sure. So is this geographically neutral, or?
We take companies from anywhere, but what's exciting for India is that we'll be launching the Foundry, but it'll be around September, October, so keep an eye out for it.
So tell me, Jeremy, is this really coming from the fact that today disruption is all around us, but really the disruption is coming from the much smaller, nimble companies and not so much from the big behemoths such as yours, right?
The big opportunity here is for collaboration between startups and corporates. We bring the scale, we bring the budgets, we bring the opportunities for startups to get exposure in a way that they would never have thought possible. At the same time, startups bring the agility and the nimbleness and the technology and obviously the entrepreneurship that can help us pioneer. And if we can bring these two things together, you not only embrace disruption, but you help both companies to scale up. And that's what it's really all about. So disruption for us is an opportunity rather than a threat.
Right. But tell me, if you do fund a startup, right, and it's a cutting-edge idea, do you own that startup?
So through Foundry, we're not taking equity stakes.
Okay.
What we're doing is we're paying the startup cash to experiment with their technology. So we want to make sure that they've got the resources they need to deliver a great pilot to Unilever.
But that will be, they will deliver to your brief, which is specific to Unilever.
Yes, yes. And then if they need funding for growth, then that's a separate discussion that we have with them through Unilever Ventures.
Give me a sense of how many startups you've funded and some of the ideas that have come out of these startups via this collaboration.
So what's happened in the last 12 months is we've launched pilots with 65 different startups. Across the world? Across the world, including companies from India.
Sure.
And what we're really doing is helping to unearth the guys that are inventing the future. And for us, that's what it's all about, is finding the partners for the future. Right.
So give me like one great idea you got through the startup.
Okay, good question. So Knorr, our food brand, wanted to answer the question of what's for dinner tonight, but they wanted to do it on a feature phone, which is where what medium most of our consumers are operating from. So we put the brief out through the Foundry, and a company from London came back called Digital Genius. So what they helped us create was this concept called Chef Wendy, where if you're a user in, say, South Africa or any part of the world, you can text in the ingredients you have in your fridge, and then Chef Wendy will text you back some recipes. Most of the recipes that Chef Wendy recommends are recipes that contain Knorr products.
Okay, so basically, if I've got you right, you're trying to what brands such as yours are doing, who are really looking to leverage the cutting edge technology of startups, is essentially you are thinking like a VC and playing like a startup. Is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah, that's probably not a bad way to think about it. Yeah.
So my question there is, if you're thinking like a VC and playing like a startup, they're actually very different sensibilities, right? So the way a VC functions versus how a startup functions are, the way you play is very different. How do you ensure you manage both?
So what we try and do is we try and make it easy for startups to work with Unilever, because startups and corporates often don't mix that well, and so we're trying to make that as easy as possible, and that's why we created the Foundry.
How are you making it easy?
Well, if you want to make that easy, you have to give people the framework for experimentation. And what we do there is we have this pitch pilot partner process, which is our framework. We've dramatically accelerated the speed to market and dramatically shrunk the cost of experimenting. So what we then do is enable every marketeer to experiment with new tech and pilot new opportunities.
Could you give me a sense of the business viability of having something like the Foundry and how it's translating into maybe cost saving or actual increase in revenue?
We're wanting to work with startups that are more efficient and more effective, and bring more efficient and more effective ways of marketing. And when we're looking at efficiencies, what we're seeing is that startups are offering products and solutions that are typically about half the cost of our existing solutions. And when it comes to more effective ways of engaging with people, we're finding that startups are bringing, increasing our engagement levels, our brand recall rates by about 40 to 50% versus what traditional technologies have brought. So startups are not only inventing the future, but they're inventing a more efficient future as well.
On that note, thank you so much, Jeremy.
Thanks for having us.